Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity, and thank to the honourable members for the questions, because the questions were not necessarily located per slide. Please do allow me to speak in random. Hopefully you will get the answer as I get by. Myself and General Khopane will jointly try to answer the questions. I think the sticky one at first is the private securities. How are we going to delineate who is there, who's right, who's wrong? The issue here, our view is at local level, there are security structures that are dealing with these problems already. So from where we are standing, we cannot close those outside. But definitely, we're not going to say, you are here, come on board. We'll look at the structures, local structures, on who is honestly working on the problem, and we'll integrate those people into our security system. And that's what we're trying to say, that do we have the ability to verify who is who? I think that is a bit of a challenge. But we are saying those that are on the same side of seeking stability for the communities will be welcoming to them. Slide 7, chain of command. Sitting here, I'm trying to relate to the question, because since we've been working with the police, the common ground is coordination and joint planning. We plan together, we coordinate together, we make a plan, we go execute. But here is a standing issue. The arrest is a purview of the police. We as soldiers, we got nothing to do with that. We create conditions for police to be able to do their work. And what is different this time around, which I'm not used to, our joint planning has said the police are embedding policemen to the defense force full-time this time around. One will remember in years gone by, there was if there was an operation, we'll go to the police station and request the police to accompany us. Now, this time around is different. Police are pledged jointly to the deployment. We will be living in the same barracks and operating at the same time. So in practical terms, there are very, very few chances, if any, that a defense force member will find himself isolated. We are not saying it will not happen. We're saying this time around is different, because police are pledged jointly to sleep in the same barracks as soldiers. So in our view, I don't think it can get better than that. It's not possible, because of practical reasons, for police to command soldiers, for soldiers to command police. It's a problem. When the soldier disappeared, we treat as a wall. I don't know how a police, even as a general, how do you deal with a police that is not at work? So it's a very, very murky ground that we try and avoid. The question from the honorable member in terms of the rank and function of troops in the Western Cape, I can only talk from the Defence Force side, because that system is controlled. When a soldier is deploying, he deploys with his weapon. There is a register that is managing stores of issuing and carrying on weapons by Defence Force members. Whether the police have got a system like that, I am not sure. But if you were to go to the force that will be employed, you will find a register that is indicating what weapons, what numbers, what type of weapons that are on the ground per province where the soldiers are deployed. Consequences for action. I think I'm going to leave this one for our police colleagues, because within the Defence Force there is a clear line how we deal with misbehaviors of soldiers in relation to operation. And that is very, very clear. We have a legal team that is there to deal with those There is a charging system which is available to the commander to effect consequence management. But I will wish to share that with the police. Slide 12, honorable members, we've been at pain trying to explain the deployment in Sporung. If the president, as an example, were to say, Defense Force deploy in KwaZulu-Natal in August, it's not possible that you can wake up with troops on the ground in KZN prior or immediately after the president has pronounced himself. Almost, if not always, soldiers need to prepare to get to where they are supposed to. When one scrutinized this operation in Sporung, you will find that the troops were on the ground in line with the presidential meeting that was signed. There was coordination on the 10th, there was deployment, show of force in Eldorado Park. Now the question remains, what happened from January up to that deployment? Is exactly where we are. What happened the day the president announced the deployment in Western Cape? We went into a preparation mode. And that is why we are saying to this House, only in the 1st of April we'll be able to deploy, because we must develop deployment drills until to a point where we are ready to execute the operation. Now, honorable members, is exactly what happened in this situation. Much as the operation was planned for the 30th of January to the end of April, the boots on the ground were only on the ground after the presidential minute was signed, which was on the 10th. Whether you will say we must go to Limpopo in November, that will be the sequence. There is no shorter version than that. And that is our take on that one. The one honorable member on exit plan, honorable members, Skosan, I think I'll leave that one to the minister to take a bite on that. But Defense Force is a system that is commanded from the top. We follow timeline as per our leadership. And again, I have said, if there is any confusion, we were very, very upfront to say, by the 1st of May, we'll be able to execute the operations. I say again, April, 1st of April, we'll be on the ground executing operations. Again, we are not losing time. We have to fit into our combat readiness preparation, mission readiness preparation, culminating with the deployment. Again, a Defense Force, the operation in country is at the liberty of this House. I think it's open to your monitoring and your visit at your leisure. I don't think anyone that is here is prevented. Only when it's coordinated, of course, so that we know where you must go to. So members of the Parliament are allowed to visit the operation. Sharing of information, it never was a problem between the police and the Defense Force, to the best of my knowledge. But it's also a fact that there was never an effort to have an interoperable system in terms of radios between the police and the Defense Force, because we are structured for different purposes. In the main, when we work together, we communicate with line-of-sight radios, commonly known as Kenwoods, and that is enough for us to speak to one another. But I do not know, I stand to be corrected, of any system within the South African police that is speaking to the Defense Force vis-a-vis. In terms of outreach programs, I think I must elaborate here a bit, honorable member. This is not funded, this is not budgeted for. This is what we do amongst community to build relations. oftentimes soldiers put together money to create projects within community. They will drive past a dilapidated house. During their time, they will put money together to give a house a family. When you look at Corona, you will see that there's a lot of that footprint. But to entrench ourselves within communities, we play sports with communities. We help where there are problems because we don't want to be enemies with the people that we're working with. So that's what we are talking about. Where there is a need and the skills are available within the group, for sure, we are more than willing to help. So I think this point must not be interpreted as budgeted point within the deployment. Is an initiative strictly by the soldiers. Verification purpose exists exactly for that. Within the Defence Force, the verification team consists of a legal people. Their purpose there is legal, medical, and other expertise that are there. They are there deliberately to ensure that wrong people should not find themselves within the employment or the deployment. So from the deployment, from the Defence Force side, is very clear. When we do verification, it extends to criminal record and. I think the ones relating to challenges of justice I will keep. I want to talk to budget sufficiency and insufficiency. I think it's very important for the House to understand that in terms of the Defence Force, there is one operation that is funded, internal operation, that is Corona. So whenever we are deployed, we do estimate, we present the budget of the cost. Now you will see that the problem, perhaps the model of funding the Defence Force and the model to fund the police are uniquely different. It's very, very difficult to talk into that. But we do estimates based on the requirements of the deployment, and we submit that upon the approval of the employment papers. We then request allocation. So it's going to be very difficult to say in advance, is the budget sufficient or insufficient? In terms of previous deployment with the police, I think many a times there are debriefs that we do jointly at the end of the deployment, and there are many lessons that are integrated, many of which that we have brought into this joint employment planning to prevent some of those incidents. Remaining combat ready for the Defence Force is a very important point. Remember, there is 4 elements within the Defence Force that must exist all the time. We must prepare for operations. We must train. We must develop. We must do exercises. We must send people on courses. And through exercises that we do annually, that's what gives us the nucleus of saying we are combat ready. And that is a repetitive cycle. There is no time where the Defence Force is sitting doing nothing. But here is the catch. Every mission has got its own dynamics. So you can't take generically what we have done on DRC and impose on internal operation. That requires a preparation of its own that is related to the deployment. The one, as before I conclude, say, I just want to make sure that I have covered everything that is here. Is the Defence Force trained to do internal operation? Is an emphatic no. Yes, sorry, it's an emphatic yes. Because I'll tell you why. There is a doctrine within the Defence Force that deals with deploying inside built-up areas, is known as FIBA. And that you learn from entering the Defence Force and you grow with it. So there is no Defence Force member that does not know what happens when you are deployed in an urban area, guaranteed. Martin, I don't know if there is a part that you will wish to take. I thought I should address that one. Thank you.
Thank you, General. On the issue of whether K9 units are deployed, my Honorable, we can confirm that we formed up structures which we are trying to say we want to engage this criminality at all fronts. And suffice to say that we have formed all these structures accordingly to engage. It's a good thing to have. It is our side pockets to utilize on the ground. If we go and give everything, honorable members, we are losing the principles of war somewhere along the line. I submit, honorable members, we are ready. I am a paratrooper, I confirm. I confirm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Defence Force. We'll hand over to the police.
Thank you once more, Chair and honorable members. Chair, let me first and foremost thank honorable members for comments that were made, including the questions. I think they seek to put the society at ease. I think Honorable Mananiso, it's part and parcel of communicating with our society, and it's part and parcel of ensuring that we do give awareness, because I know the South Africans are watching, or they will come back and watch and listen to these responses. But over and above, Chair, Honorable Mananiso knows, I think I worked with her in December. So anytime any member who's available to join the operations are free to do so. There is nothing, we are transparent forces and will continue to do so. But that needs to be done properly and controlled, because we do have briefings before we undertake any operation, but we make sure that relevant people are at the relevant briefing, because you cannot be at the briefing that is tactical, otherwise we will be found wanting. We will not have any room to cry to as the society, because members were part and parcel of whatever challenges that will be picked up during that operation. So I just want to say, when that oversight is done at any given time, caution must be that don't be at the wrong place at the wrong time, so that we leave that room for the members of the society to have a place and space where they will go and vent if anything untoward happen. I will not repeat what my colleagues have said, but to reiterate, Chairperson, I need to emphasize that this is part and parcel of the bigger organized crime group strategy that is being developed, that is underway. Operational areas that have been identified here is the hotspots as pronounced by the President, that over and above these plans that are in place at these particular areas, there are embedded challenges that we need to look at, hence the deployment. And my colleagues have reiterated, and it's in the slides, that this is not only going to be confined to these areas. And I need to remind the House that normal operations are not going to cease because of this deployment. This deployment is focused and targeted. We do continue with our Operation Chanela, that's one. Two, we do have organized crime group strategy or plan that is going to be rolled out parallel to this plan, because the commodities or the dimensions that we are going to be addressing with this plan are the same as those that are in the bigger picture. I think we did highlight it on the introduction that this is continuation of the organized crime plan that is underway. And that also, Chairperson, will answer the issue of who is deployed, because I think question that came sharply is whether the detectives, whether the NPA, whether the DSD, or whoever on the organized crime plan. Every department, and my colleagues did reiterate and emphasize on it, Chairperson, it will continue on the ICVPS. ICVPS is integrated violent crime prevention strategy that is running parallel. So any other operations, they are not going to cease. But I need to indicate that when we were drawing these plans, it is a joint plan. It is the NAT joints plan. It is the JCPS operational plans that looked at the intelligence estimates that were presented to the team, and we look at what commodities we need to address. We convened, Chairperson, with all the department. We have drawn the plan. Each department knows what is their role. We were to sit as NAT joints yesterday for this month, but because of these other commitments, NAT joints meeting could not convene, but that is being taken care of. So deployment is across the board. NPA we have taken care of, including beyond the 12 months period that has been identified. I think Honorable Member did indicated that there is a possibility that will come back and ask for extension. We are intelligence-led operation. And if there is a need beyond the 31st of March 2027 that we need to expand, perhaps it will not be at all the areas, but we don't want to say this operation should run for 2 years or for 3 years. We want to put commitment and say, in these 12 months, what is it that can be put in place and address issues so that we can look at capacitating. I think the other issue is the capacitation of the police beyond this. Colleagues said, as and when these operations are underway, we are going to look at how police should operate, and that is part and parcel of what is in the plan to capacitate. It's a pity that we don't have students currently at the colleges, but that is the work that is underway to capacitate and have numbers of the police, because we have realized that the numbers that we are having are still not sufficient to cover the areas. The issues on slide number 7, I think the second bullet on that slide explains how the command and control will be taken forward. We talked of the prof joints, we talk of the NAT joints, and it answers as well, Chairperson of PICOP, on the last question as to the weekly measures that are going to be placed, or the successes that will be measured. On a daily basis, successes will be communicated through our POCC, Provincial Operational Centers, and NAT joints on a daily basis, and will consolidate that on a weekly basis. We are doing that now with all our operations, and that is not going to stop. Again, on the very same slide, Chair, it talks to the tech jobs. That is where on an hourly basis, successes are going. There will be people that are sitting, there will be people at the MAJOC, at the National Head Office, that will be facilitating and consolidating the operations that are happening, including receiving further intelligence to direct the operations if the need arises. On the consequence management, I'm not going to reiterate what General Yalo has indicated, that each of the two forces do have different mandates on dealing with the consequence management. We have the South African Police Service Disciplinary Code that is applied. I think if I can provide very sharply the statistics, I don't want to also give the wrong figures, but over time, Chairperson, I can just give briefly on what have been implemented since the financial year 2024-2025, where we have seen 4,500 cases, 4,564 cases to be specific, of discipline. 2,800 of those have been finalized, which gives us 62.35% of the consequence management that we're undertaking. And I need to emphasize on the consequence management or the issues of the disciplinary cases. They go through all the processes and all the legal apparatus that we are having in the country. We do know that we have Labor Relations Act, we do have Employment Equity, Labor Relations Act, we do have the laws that governs how the department needs to deal with their employees, and that are applicable. We cannot bypass any process, otherwise we'll be sitting with the civil claims. We have received in the same financial year 796 recommendations from IPIT. 506 of those have been finalized, which gives us 63.5% or 64% to round it off. So this is just figures that I can provide of the previous financial year. Of course, as I'm saying, these cases go through all the processes, investigations, and they are processed through the legal prescripts that governs how the discipline or consequence management should be applied. Chair, there was an issue of whether the deployed members and troops will undergo vetting and the screening. The answer is yes. That has been considered, and it is continuing. It will continue. We know where there is a human element, there are issues that members will also do as they are continuing with their work. Hence, there is a command. I think these two departments are very highly monitored with other structures as well as within. We work on the command and control. We work, that is the hierarchy that you'll find in the police, that you'll find in the military. So that will still be applicable, and commanders, if they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing, they will be held accountable. But the screening of the members that are deployed, which is the process that it's much quicker than vetting, because vetting will require all rigorous processes that must be undertaken by intelligence communities to finalize the vetting, so it will take time. But the vetting happens to certain areas, such as the detectives that will be on the organized crime group, because we have seen that it is a very sensitive environment to look at. On the questions of, I'm trying to run quickly because my colleagues have covered other areas, Chairperson, but on the strategic guideline, I think the call was for this document to be made available. It is a classified document. It is available, but it is a guiding document for the operators. It defines every step that those that will be deployed should do and should not. It has the do's and don'ts, and it is signed by the chiefs, not even the chairpersons of the NAT-joints, but by the chiefs, so that there is that commitment. And it is for us that are on the operational side to ensure that our members do operate within the confines of this particular document. But I can reassure the committees that that document is available. As I've said, it's classified, but it is available. The indicators that inform the renewal, and I also want on this one to reiterate on the issues of intelligence collection and give comfort to the committees and the society that we have what we call operational intelligence coordination committees with every operation. And the OICC, if I can abbreviate that operational intelligence, it's made of the 3 intelligence disciplines that we are having in the country. It's crime intelligence, it's state security intelligence, it's defense intelligence. So it's not one intelligence community that we look at or we receive report. They brief with every operation, and they will continue to do so. That will indicate for us and inform how long we should go with these operations or what needs to be undertaken. But as I've said earlier, we are not intending to prolong this deployment. We want to have stability in the country. The intention of this particular operation is to make sure that we neutralize the escalating numbers of organized crime, because it is basically looking at organized crime, but we don't want to see it or it to become a permanent feature. But we know the history is coming the long way. Issues of gangs are coming the long way, and we are from time to time trying to make sure that we don't regress, Chair, and go back to the times of Pachat. The issues of arrest. Again, the guidelines, but I need to say, if we unpack section 19(3)(2). Chair, and the continuous training, I think my colleagues did not re-emphasize enough on why the need for the joint training and why training is happening. It is to make sure that we all are on the same page of this operation. We all understand what is required of us. It is being clarified on the slides that when arrest is effected by the member of SANDF, with the signing of the guideline, there are certain powers of police in terms of section 2053 that will be conferred to the members of the SANDF, hence the need for this joint training to take them through. However, on the slides, we did indicate that when such arrest happens, I think it's on slide number 7, bullet number 3, on the main bullets, arrest where authorized shall be effected strictly in accordance with the Criminal Procedure Act, and where SANDF arrests or detain any person or seize any article or object must, as soon as possible, hand it over to the department that is authorized and mandated to do so. That is that detective that will be having, that is that SAPS member that is being deployed together with the SANDF. When we were planning with our colleagues, the very first meeting after the pronouncement, we agreed that we are going to work on the ratio of 2:1. And we can reiterate, you may see SNDF in numbers in the training classes that were displayed here. But we all know that we have more police stations where we are going to call up members from time to time. Agreement that we had 2:1. There will be, where we deploy 25 SANDF members, provincial commissioners have been taken through. They will make sure that at least it's 50 members of the South African Police Service so that we can balance. This is civil policing. It is not a war of the country with itself. We are trying to manage the crime levels that are going high to make sure that South African Police Service works without fear or favor. I think we are all witnesses in here. I've been coming here, Chairperson. We've been communicating during Valumgoti the type of weapons, the type of people that we have observed, that have attacked. I think this is the only country I haven't done a comparative statistics that you will find 22 police officers killed in a period of 3 months. That tells us the violent nature of the country that we live in, and the nature of brazenness that we're having in the criminals. Hence, we are saying when the SANDF is protecting, the police must do their work. It is coming from that premise, Chairperson, not the failures of the police. I think the statistics and the numbers of arrests that we are communicating from time to time speaks a volume. I don't want to blow my own horn as the South African Police Service, but we are doing everything to our power. I need to indicate that the reason why I see VP as chairperson, it's because there are other underlying issues that needs to be addressed. If I can give the statistics of the deployment that we are doing on the POP members, that their secondary function is for crime prevention. They are working more on the unrests than to do that secondary function of assisting the stations with crime prevention. So it tells that there are other issues that we need to deal with as the society, so that we don't criminalize every activity and action that our members are doing. And I want to go back to the ICVPS that is why that strategy was adopted, so that all of us can take the little piece of what we need to be doing. I think, Chairperson, I have addressed everything, but to reiterate that all units, all capacities and capabilities that we have in the police service will be called up for this particular operations. Where you don't see them in the call-up instruction is because some of the call-ups are made for the people that are moving from one area to the other, but the localized capacity and capability will be deployed, and you don't need to call them up because it is the day-to-day and it is the mandate of that particular area to deploy from time to time. I will pause here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, General. We'll go straight to Acting Minister. We'll end up with the Minister of Defense. The Acting Minister of Police, Honorable Kash.
We had our own caucus, and the minister deployed me to come later, but it's fine.
Okay.
We are
okay. If
before you.
No, it's fine. If you had your own caucus, then let's start with the minister. Then we'll end up with you. That's fine. Minister can proceed. Minister.
No, thank you, Chair, because most of the matters relate to them. So I won't say much, really, because I think the officials have answered most of the questions. One question really that for me kept on coming, which I think is very helpful to say what is the exit plan, because it goes back to what is our objective as defense. And we've said in our documents, ours is to neutralize, so that it's not to say in the Western Cape, we're going to clear gang violence. And that's why there are clear time frames to say, indeed, to deal with gang violence, there are a number of symptoms. I mean, if you go to the Western Cape, for instance, because I've done some work there, the problems are historical, they're endemic. It's not things you can do within a year, but you can neutralize to ensure that all the other sectors that have to come in can do their work, because you can't do it as police and defense only. For instance, in the Western Cape, gangsters have become young people. It has become youth. The reason the schooling has been seriously disrupted because of gangsters, kids can't go to schools, and therefore already they get easily recruited. So it's something that you have to work with the Department of Education when you have stabilized the area to say, can we then really see if we can restore education? So the exit plan, as I say, our plan is to neutralize, not to eradicate. And the performance indicators are going to move from area to area depending on what the problems are. Some of the problems in the Western Cape are very deep, and you have to work with the provincial government. The apartheid spatial planning has created some of the problems there, where people are highly congested in a single place. There's been no development of housing. Kids grow up in very crowded homes. So you will not be able to eradicate until you have an integrated plan. So I thought I should raise it, because it's things that we have been discussing as defense to say, what is going to be our exit plan? It's going to depend on the difficulties. Perhaps in the West Rand or in Valamkoti, you close the hole and then the Zamazamas migrate. It will be a different indicator, but it means you have to chase them in the different areas where they are. So I thought I should say that. The other point which I found also useful from members, especially from Member Manais, about the role of Parliament and public, because not only will it help in terms of coordinating, because what you don't want to do from the experience is that members of Parliament say they want to come and do an oversight, you're not there. So it's as if you really don't want to cooperate, so you have not prepared. So it would be helpful to really have a coordinated, informed interaction, because it helps a lot, especially in terms of even managing public expectations. Since we went into, I get inundated by calls from committees to say, you are here, but yesterday's husband killed a wife. You have to keep on explaining to say, and which is very helpful, because people just know that you've come there to deal with violence. So gender-based violence is violence, whatever violence. So you have to really get committee leaders to understand your mission so that they can also help you communicate what the mission is, and hence this interaction is very helpful in terms of really empowering and informing committees in different areas what is it that you want to do. The other point which members have raised, which I really also agree in terms of these outreach programs, I found them very helpful in terms of really creating trust between the defense and communities, where even young people should find it comfortable to interact with communities. And the department sometimes takes young kids on flights, and it really it softens out so they can deal with, or even touch and feel what the defense, they put them on boat rides, so which is very helpful. There's been problems where our health workers go and do cataract removals. So not only in sports, so in different areas where we can really work with communities to create that relationship, because at the end of the day, you also need communities to help you in that stabilization by giving you information and all sorts of things which you won't find on your own if there's a trust gap. So it is I find it a very helpful one. And I agree with the member from NK to say you also want to avoid the militarization of society. And that's why the time frames are quite important to say we're going in for a year to stabilize, so that you don't find yourself militarizing the country and really always dealing with hard power and not always working with people with soft power. So indeed, the Constitution allows the President to inform, not to ask for permission, to inform Cabinet about the deployment. It's within his powers, but the member is right to say we have to make sure that it's not extreme, and that's why you have to find ways of really working with communities. The last one, which I also, or the other one about operations, just to share with colleagues without necessarily sounding patronizing. I had a first-hand experience about the workings, how police, defense force, and SARS work when you go to the port. I think members, if they visit the port, they'll see that. The defense disrupts. When people cross illegally, they detain them. After detaining them, they hand them over to the police to process them. And that's what you expect as an ongoing practice. If they confiscate goods, they can't allow drugs to pass and say it's not our work they interrupt the drug movement, get police to come and process that, and worse still, even go to SARS to really say what do they do in disposing the goods. And it works very well. So I'm saying it's a practice that is there and ongoing. So on the success, I've said that, and agree that the whole society integration, and hence I'm very happy that the committee shows an interest, because without the society understanding what we are all about and getting public representatives being able to take the communication further, it sometimes makes it difficult, because when you are seen as strangers, people don't know what you're about, or they have assumptions about what you're about, which maybe are not the correct assumptions. We have a very strong communication team between SAPS and its defense force, but as I say, reinforced by communities themselves, it's very, very important. And this question about private security, that also has been very helpful in terms of, because they're in that space. for instance, in your border control, you find that there are private security companies which are legit, which are working in that space. You can share information and operations and makes lives, because they are there, they're doing that work. If you go into estates, some of the cases that have come from the police, I thought they were raised in the West Rand, it was the private security which says, we saw, they report to you. We saw these people living at night, coming very suspicious, therefore give information. So it actually enhances your work. Yes, you have to avoid being infiltrated or just supporting the other, but because they're there in that space, at different places, it really enriches any interaction to work with them, especially those that are recognized at the format, that are already doing incredible work in those communities. So I thought I should raise those, Chair, and my colleague can take over.
Thank you, Minister. Acting Minister Chachalia, you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks very much to all the members for your questions. They were all important, interesting, and helpful to help, I think, the members of the executive also to address important issues that you've identified. Let me just say one thing on the level of preparedness. The Minister and I have worked with our respective leaderships over the last few weeks, received several iterations of this joint plan, and I think you see evidence of that work today and the level of preparedness. The generals from the South African Defence Force and the police who have spoken today are they are the top, they are the elite structure of our law enforcement agencies in the country. These are highly experienced and competent people who have developed an operational a strategy, an operational plan. They've set up the structures that are going to be required for coordination at all three levels: strategic, operational, and tactical. And I think I can say that both of us are satisfied that the leaders of the two law enforcement agencies, SANDF and the police, have applied themselves to the challenges that we face. What is the context in which this decision has been made? The context that we face as a country, particularly when it comes to law enforcement. There are indeed multiple crises. The systemic weaknesses in law enforcement are increasingly evident to the nation, as we listen sometimes incredulously at what's emerging from the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee. Some of the underlying frailties concern weaknesses in detection. The ratio of detectives to dockets. Dealing with ordinary crime, we all know that in that area we've got a lot of work to do to strengthen the investigative capabilities of the South African Police Service. In terms of crime intelligence, where chickens have come home to roost over a long period of time, it is true, Member Niehaus, that certainly I would concur with you if you say that those are capabilities that need to be developed. They have been weakened or undermined over a period of time. The challenge to integrate across the criminal justice system to ensure alignment of our NDTP and the investigative structures in the South African Police Service. When it comes to dealing with ordinary crime in the country, I'm not talking about organized crime yet, let's just be honest with each other that we are still struggling to achieve those levels of integration in the criminal justice system of joined-up government. And through these deployments of the SANDF, in the next, was it a week, a month, year, are these systemic problems going to be resolved? Is that the standard by which the committee believes this intervention should be assessed? Because the Minister of Defense is indicating what its objective is. It's a stabilization intervention, and it is time-bound. So the reset agenda for law enforcement is, in my view, at least a 10-year project. And we're interacting with the committee to understand where those challenges are and to work with the executive branch to build the capabilities in the law enforcement agencies that are going to be necessary is a long-term project. I would make the observation because I would have a slight quibble with the assessment, the highly generalized assessment that the South African Police Service is failing. Over the last 2 years, in fact, I would say with ordinary crime, the kind of crime the country has suffered with over a prolonged period of time, in fact, the evidence is clear that over the last 2 years there's been considerable improvement. But the levels of violent crime are still very high. And in some areas over the last 30 years, gender-based violence, despite our best efforts, despite what everyone will agree probably are the right policy interventions, it's very difficult to make the argument that we're seeing improvement. And really, a blame framework, a culpability framework, doesn't help address why that is the case. And the part of the problem with that assessment is that it misses what I think is the big picture here. And I'm hoping that the debate about crime in this country begins to shift. Because I believe that what we are experiencing is a significant evolution in the patterns of crime. Even as the police, NIAs, are showing some, that their strategies to deal with the kind of crime we experience in our communities has improved in the last 2 years. But what we've experienced is an evolution of organized crime. And that is not simply a South African problem. What has happened is that this globalized, organized crime infiltrating key economic sectors, infiltrating, you're quite right, state institutions, particularly law enforcement institutions, taking on diverse manifestations, extortion, new kinds of drugs that are being imported in the country from Latin America, from Asia. That has caught the country, I believe, flat-footed. Our law enforcement agencies need to be supported in developing the new capabilities that are required to be effective in dealing with organized crime. I think there was an evolution over the last few years, which you don't hear it in the discussion, even here, a recognition that things have changed. I would make this point. In a way, I think we're in our FBI moment. For a long time in the United States, they would have been contented with saying ordinary policing. But given what they experienced in Chicago and New York, they realized a kind of emergence of mafia-style structures. They needed to build a new institution to deal with organized crime. It's very interesting that over the last few years, there are now that are being published are indexes to measure this intensification of globalized crime. And by the way, South Africa ranks very high. I was in Vienna last week, where the discussion in Europe is about the way organized crime is evolving there, enabled by new technologies. South Africa, I said, our crime levels have come down, but what has exploded is commercial crime, enabled by new technologies. Up 60, 70%, because the new we are now introducing new technologies to modernize everything, digitalize home affairs, border control, the way departments deliver services. And that has introduced new risks for the country and new forms of crime. So if you take the reason that we now find ourselves in a situation where we have to introduce the army as a stabilization strategy, is let's take the two main problems that the president made reference to: illegal mining and gang violence. The police and the army are going to do an important job here. But dealing with gang violence, Minister Mosecha is right. These are deep, structural, systemic problems that are ultimately socioeconomic. Young people as 13 years old, 12 years old, are being recruited by these gangs, increasingly, as I said, with sophisticated structures, accumulating wealth, more and more sophisticated business structures, operating across our borders. So the conversation has to be about what capabilities the South African Police Service is going to need and the country is going to need to meet this challenge, not simply to make the argument that we are failing, that the South African Police Service is incompetent. I think that in a way, I understand the despair and the anxiety that drives that narrative, but I think we need to start a new conversation. We need our own thinking about the risks that we face also has to evolve. And the conversation in Parliament and between Parliament and the executive and between our political structures and our society has to also evolve. Now, that's why we are using the deployment of the army in this particular situation for stabilization, for containment, and to create the space, as Minister Mosecha was saying, to begin to build the capabilities that are required, as General Musikiri is saying, to implement an organized crime strategy. And to be clear, colleagues, we are at the very earliest stages of being able to implement such a strategy effectively. But the way this intervention is being conceptualized is to think about the deployment alongside our efforts to develop and implement a response, an effective response to organized crime. The kind of organized crime that I'm trying to introduce into the conversation. This is not, I would say, actually, we've had gang violence in this country and gangs, well, as long as I've been growing up, and I'm now in my 60s. But the gang violence we're seeing now is not that one that I grew up with. It's a new animal, and it needs new tools, new capabilities to combat. So, have we learned from experience? I think we've made our best effort to say, this is what we've done previously. What do we need to do differently and better this time? So first, there is, I think both of us are satisfied that there's been a careful planning and careful thinking by our law enforcement agencies. Second, we are saying that we are linking this with our strategy to fight organized crime. Next, we understand that this is also an opportunity to address some of these systemic problems. So we need to do better with integrating the criminal justice system, and those colleagues who are saying we want better link between investigations, arrests, and prosecutions are right. But if the assumption is that in the next year, the results in terms of that chain, that necessary chain, are going to be dramatically better than what they are today, I don't think, I cannot make that commitment today. But what I can say is that we're going to make our best effort, because the logic, the underlying the questions is absolutely correct. Those are the right issues. Next is the all-government approach, which, again, Minister Motshekga has spoken to. What we want to do, and it's always a struggle, how do we get all the departments, including those in the social cluster, aligned across levels of government? So provincial governments and the local authorities have critical roles to play. But again, that is a critical challenge. I don't believe that we are going to solve the problem of gang violence in the Western Cape unless there is a significant change in the patterns of marginalization and investment in those communities. But we can certainly reduce the levels of violence, improve the levels of safety in order to create the space for that kind of necessary investment to have better impacts. If we can rebuild a sense of trust in our communities, their sense of agency, their sense of safety, rebuild the social fabric, then this intervention will have achieved many of the objectives we have set. Then the strong emphasis on the necessary controls, the emphasis on human rights, the emphasis on constitutionalism. We can't sit here and say that all the risks of militarization, absolutely important point, and of situations where excessive force might not be used, because our soldiers are trained to use all necessary force, not proportionate force. And that's why the way we've thought about it, interacting with our law enforcement leadership, is to say, is to recognize the distinct roles and the respective mandates of this partnership. It's the police that have the frontline role for law enforcement, not the army. But we want to leverage the capabilities of our army, including those in military intelligence, because the military have advanced capabilities of surveillance, for instance, and even in the intelligence area that may help augment, supplement the capabilities of the police service. So what I'm saying and what I'm hearing from the conversation we're having is that on the paradigm, conceptually, we are all aligned. We all agree that what is being presented, this joint plan, conceptually, paradigm-wise, is the right one. The real question is about implementation. And there, the oversight role of Parliament is going to be critical. And I would be interested in a conversation about what the performance indicators, Mr. Cameron, should be for this operation. How is this committee going to exercise its oversight role in assessing whether this particular operation, which has its own particular goals and objectives, should be assessed? And the Minister and I have an important responsibility for executive oversight. And I think the two forms of critical engagement by the committee and by the two of us, because our responsibility is also an oversight one, should help create the impetus, the framework for the police and the army to understand that in a democratic society, the right way to get results is by ensuring that our public representatives are exercising their oversight responsibilities.
As you conclude, Minister?
Yes, I am. Let me leave it there. There was a question that Member Niehaus raised with me specifically about crime intelligence. Let me just say about that matter that I have a proposal which I want to put in place to set up a stakeholder council. So bring in stakeholders, but also experts, and support and set up, I'm talking, I don't know how many of you know Mr. Mark Shaw, but to set up an observatory to collect open source information. I wouldn't call it intelligence, but we have seen from various publications that there's an abundance of open source information that can be used to assess where the gangs are operating, what their structures are, and so forth. And I'm hoping to put those capabilities in place to carry out my responsibilities for executive oversight, and I will be very happy to be able to share the results of that kind of information with the committee. Chair, I apologize for taking up too much time, but I wanted to respond as best I could to the important questions that were asked by your committee, and also raise some matters which I think should be part of the committee's deliberations and reflection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Really, the new conversation about crime. This is very important, Minister. And before I hand over to the chairperson of the PC on